Welcome to Built to Win, the podcast created to help you level up your business game by developing a success mindset made for the long run. In this episode, How to Ditch Mom Guilt, Neora's Olson Rourke is joined by her mom, Renee Olson, to talk about how entrepreneurs can manage the tricky balance of work and parenting and get rid of the guilt for good. Listen as they share their real-world tips for making your entrepreneurial journey guilt-free and turning your experiences into valuable teaching moments for your children.
Hello and welcome to Built to Win. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to ditch mom guilt. I call it mom guilt. It's really parent guilt. It can be anybody, but I'm going to speak from my perspective as a mom. And I think, as parents, we carry a lot of the emotional load for our children, right? Whatever they're feeling, we're also feeling. We're also carrying the logistical load of where they need to be, what special day is it at school? All of these things that are just constantly running through our minds of how can I show up as the best parent? And so we're going to talk about how to balance the very important role of being a parent with also the very important role of being an entrepreneur. This podcast is all about helping you be built to win as an entrepreneur. And, I grew up in an entrepreneurial household. And they were first generation of being entrepreneurs, meaning none of their parents had been entrepreneurs. Their parents had been, had roles of clocking in at a certain time, clocking out at a certain time, more traditional roles. And so my parents were kind of figuring out how to create this balance and how to be both a successful business owner and entrepreneur and be a really amazing parent as well. And I am really thankful for that experience. Truly, I think it's one of the most defining things that created a lot of things in me that I wouldn't have had without it. I think it taught me, one, to have a really healthy relationship with work. I've always enjoyed working, even at a young age. I've seen it as a way to create purpose and impact in this world. And I've always just had that great relationship because I had that model to me. My parents weren't constantly complaining about having to go to work. Like, words matter, right? So I wasn't hearing, oh, I have to go to my job. Oh, I have to do this. They were always passionate about the work that they were doing and how that work was making a difference in the world. So that helps me have a really healthy relationship with work. It taught me a lot of really important people skills because I got to grow up seeing and interacting with a lot of adults beyond just my parents. I think sometimes children are so kind of in their own cocoon that they don't develop those skills. And so I'm thankful for that. And I think it also developed and gave me a bigger perspective on life. Again, not being in this little bubble of just, a children's world, but seeing a bigger perspective of what happens in life, what happens in the world. So I'm really thankful for growing up in that environment, and I'm excited for today because I have the unique opportunity and you have the unique opportunity to be able to talk with my mom about this topic. And she really was, for me, my example in an era where it really wasn't a norm for moms to have a really big career and to also, be very hands-on moms. And so she did that incredibly well. And I learned so much from her that I'm now able to use with my three children. And so I learned a lot from her, and I know you're going to learn a lot from her as well today. So please welcome to Built to Win, my mom, Renee Olson. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I was getting so excited listening to you and just realizing where we are and where we've gone on this journey. And we're here today at the Neora offices, and it is Bring Your Child to Work Day. So my grandchildren, your two daughters, are here checking out to see what we do on a daily basis. And it's just come full circle. So it's super exciting.
It coincidentally ended up that we were recording this podcast on this day, and to have, literally three generations in the building, with you kind of starting this entrepreneurial trend for our family, me now, doing the same. And then two of my three girls are here learning what it looks like to, run a business. So it really is cool to see that ripple effect. But it really started with your decision to become an entrepreneur. So prior to me being born, you were a flight attendant, had more of that traditional kind of a job. And after I was born, it led you to kind of consider, what did you want work to look like. So why did you decide to kind of take that path of being an entrepreneur after I was born?
Well, we had traditional businesses to begin with, and that was more of a going to a place every day. And I took you with me there, and I really wasn't quite sure what it was going to look like, but I knew that I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but I also knew that I wanted a career and to be able to earn my own money without, taking money away from the family. So, for a couple of years, I just did the traditional thing, and I set up a playroom for you in the office. I don't know if you even remember that,
Yeah,
but
I do.
you would go with me every day, and that's just what we did. And you didn't know any different, and you loved it. And it was a showroom. We had a solar company, and it had sunrooms that went along with it, and we had models in the office. And when people were going to look into the sunrooms, you could barely talk. You'd say, "Watch your tap, watch your tap." But so you were just always in a work environment. And when I got into direct sales, it was much more flexible. And when you were, so that made it easier for when you went to school and had your own activities.
So, as an entrepreneur, one of the benefits is you do have a lot more flexibility in terms of deciding when you want to work and those kinds of things. But it also, at the same time, the lines become a little bit more blurry between personal time and work. It starts to all kind of flow together. So, how did you manage that?
Well, I tried as much as I could to work around your schedule. When you were in school, I would work. I'd get up before you did and do an hour or two of work. And of course, I'd stay up after you went to bed and I would work. But sometimes, like in the summer when you didn't have school, it was different. And I just incorporated you into what I was doing. So, whatever office I had, you had a desk in your office as well. And it had games and toys and crayons and coloring books in it. But for the most part, you would rather do work related things. You had all kinds of papers that you would collect anytime we went to the post office or UPS or anywhere where there was paperwork. And you had a desk full of papers, and you would work on your so called team, and you would be stamping things and stuffing envelopes, and you really saw yourself working, and you loved it and you enjoyed it. And sometimes I was at it, we work at a home office, and sometimes we worked at an office with a lot of other people that we worked with. And you were raised that way. I remember in the office there where we had all the people that we worked with, you had your own little room, and you had a little potty chair there, and that's where you were kind of potty trained, and everybody was cheering you on and so excited about it. And it was just, you had a different experience, but I think it molded you into who you are today. I really did not know at the time, or even until the last few years, what an impact that being brought up that way had on you, and how it was a foundation for what you're doing today.
Yeah, I think that's so great. And I think that's like, when we get to this topic of guilt, right? You could have viewed that as a way of like, oh, I feel so guilty. She's not at the park playing with her friends, like she's here doing whatever. But kids don't really know how to, they just feel like they're a part of something and they will enjoy it if you make it enjoyable. And so one of the things that I think that you did really well was include me in it. It wasn't this separation of, okay, this is work and you're not a part of it. And I think that's sometimes where people can get it wrong. And then their kids kind of feel excluded from what is going on. And so one thing I think you did really well is include me, like you mentioned, whether that's like in the actual like day-to-day stuff, which for some people they can do, for some people they can't. But you also included me from a goal standpoint. Like I always knew why you and the family and or my dad, Jeff, why we were all working towards a goal. And I really saw it as a family goal and not just a goal that you had. And so what would, what was your thought process and how did you kind of include me in the goals that we were working towards?
Well, you you always wanted to know what are, if there was a contest or a trip to win or anything like that, you always wanted to know. And you would even listen in on phone calls where, like company phone calls, and you'd be taking notes on what the criteria was for the trip or the contest or whatever it was. And you did a good job of holding me accountable every day when I picked you up from school. You wanted to know how much closer I was and what I had gotten done towards my goal that day. So it was early goal setting, and that was just innately in you. That's not really something I was smart enough to really train you on, but you picked that up early and picked it up well.
Well, I think it's the osmosis of proximity, right? I don't know that I don't
Yes.
know that it was just necessarily innate. Like if you're at that age, if you've never heard people talk about their goals, you're not just going to come up with that. But I think it goes again to you included me, you had the calls, on speaker maybe that I could listen to. You brought me to some events. And so just by hearing that, you start thinking differently. And that's why I think as an entrepreneur, if you're able to view what you do in your business, not as a liability to the time with your kids, but as really a way to give your kids exposure to things they were not going to have exposure to in life. Like they're not teaching those things in school. Like there's no outlet for your kids to be exposed to that, but you're as an entrepreneur creating that. And like you said, it wasn't even necessarily intentional, but by doing what you were doing and having me in proximity to it, it just kind of naturally happens, which I think is so cool. One of the other things that you did is you created this thing called Ambi Hour. Ambi was one of my nicknames growing up, and it was Ambi Hour. And so, especially like during summers when I was home from school and you were needing to get work done, we would create this hour where I could choose whatever we did. And so, again, I think words and framing are so important and how we speak to our kids. So, if our kids come to us and say, "Oh, mommy, I want to play this game," and it's like, "No, I have to work." What we're saying to them is like, "No, we're not giving them an outlet for it, and I have to work, not I'm choosing to do this because I want to," or you're creating this negative kind of language with your response. But instead, you would say, "That's a great idea. I can't wait to do that. Let's do that during Ambi Hour." And so Ambi Hour is like a full hour where you did nothing else but do whatever I had picked. So I had an outlet for whatever maybe attention or conversation or thing I wanted to do with you. And that allowed it to funnel into that. So, like, what are your memories of why you came up with Ambi Hour or how that like helped you not have that feeling of guilt?
Well, because I couldn't give you full attention all day long, but I
Right.
didn't want to feel guilty about that. And I didn't want you to feel neglected by that. So by making it a special hour, then we were able to accomplish both things. I didn't feel guilty. I could get my work done. You were happy. You were satisfied. We both really looked forward to Ambi Hour. I know I did as well. And it made it a very special time. And sometimes when you have your kids full time and you don't concentrate the time like that into a special focused time, it's not quite as special. The day just goes by. But that
Right.
way we had a very special hour at least each day.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so brilliant and I think it works for both sides, both the parent and the child. And like you said, I think sometimes we're not present in the moment. And so if you're trying to like split your attention between what you're trying to do with your kid and get your work done, you're not doing either thing really well. And then also the person that you're trying to split your attention with feels that, versus if there's that outlet and they know that in that hour they're going to get your undivided attention, and you show up to that hour with your undivided attention, that smaller section of quality time is going to make more of an impact than if you spent 8 hours with them and they never really had your attention.
True. So true. Yes.
I still remember Ambi hour, and I think with 3 kids, it's a little harder. They can't all get their own hour. So, but we've kind of taken those concepts and kind of worked them, that same thought process, into things that work for us. So I think all of this is really to share our story and help you hear concepts and hear like things that you can make work for your particular family and what you have going on. And one of the things is in including your kids in your goals, like we were talking about. I think sometimes people underestimate how much their kids can really wrap their head around business type topics or goals or things of that nature. And so, like, did you notice as I was growing up just a difference in my perception of those things versus my other friends or peers?
Well, I think you were much more focused, and like schoolwork is a good example because you were very goal oriented in your schoolwork, and you were focused and driven. And I think that you got that by being exposed to the business world and work world. And yes, you were, we never had to tell you to do your homework. We never had to, stay on top of you about make sure your assignments were done. You were so good at that, and much more so than some of your friends. And I think really that had a lot to do with you just seeing about getting what
Right.
it looked like to get things done. And it
Yeah.
made you a better student.
Yeah. I think when you can view that, when you can view the things you're teaching your kids, then you are able to balance that with the things that you maybe feel like you're not doing enough of. Every mom has their moments, right? For sure, where you're like, feel like you're not measuring up on all categories. But overall, feeling guilty for being a working mom, I don't struggle with very much. And I think it's just because I have this firsthand perspective of I wouldn't have had it any other way because I got so much from it. And I want to do the same for my kids and give them those skills. So how was that for you? Because you were really in an era too. I feel like nowadays, like it's way more common than it was for you to be. And you didn't just like have a small business, like you were running a major global business. Like it wasn't a small feat. So
Right.
how did that, like, what was that experience like for you? Did you ever feel guilty that you weren't doing enough or you're missing something or, all of those things?
Like you said, every mom has their moments. And there were a couple of times that I did feel a little bit guilty. Like sometimes you would give me a note when I'd be on a phone call and it said, I'm hungry. So I would write back and say, make a sandwich. And you'd be shaking your head no and pointing to me like you want me to feed you. But you finally end up, if you were hungry enough to go make your sandwich, and we'd have dinner later on together when I was done. But it taught you independence. It taught
Yeah.
you, you didn't always, and sometimes I would feel guilty about that sandwich thing, but it worked out in the end. And then
I have no lingering trauma from that. And I know how to make a sandwich. So and it works out.
what the other time I did feel guilty is you were so invested in our trips that we won, and you usually would go with us on to like conferences and things, and so you thought you really were a part of the business. But one time we earned a trip to Monte Carlo, and it was really a very adult trip, all adults only, and you were so upset that we went without you. And whenever we call from our trip, you wouldn't answer, you wouldn't talk to us. So you did make me feel a little bit guilty on that one. But for the most part, no, because even then I knew that what you were being exposed to was such a gift to you because like my dad, I don't even know really what he did. He
Right.
left and went to the office and got home from work. He never talked about his work. He never talked about his goals anything business related. So I really had no concept of work or any kind of thing like that. And you really, as growing up, you knew much more about business than I did after I graduated from college, because I studied nutrition, not business. I got a degree in nutrition. And so business world was, foreign to me. And it took a big learning curve for me to know what you knew just by being exposed to it on a daily basis growing up.
It's funny you say that because I remember like being so shocked when I would ask my friends what do your parents do? And their response was a lot of times like, I have no idea. I don't know what they do. I'm like, what do you mean they don't do? And I can give them like my elevator pitch of what my what my parents did. I think one of the things is you have to really let go of this idea of doing everything perfectly as a mom or as a parent, as a dad. And you have to focus on the things that you really want to get right. Like, I think the Ambi Hour example is a great example of this. But I'm not trying to win an award at like every single thing I'm doing as a mom. So here's a great example for me, and then I'd like to get your perspective is like for whatever reason, the last week of school, the school feels like it's a great idea that your kid needs to dress up like something different every single day, which like requires a gymnastics backflip to find all of the different, like today they're an animal, today they're this. Like as a working parent, that is a nightmare because that is like now a very long list of things that I need to go find and do. So for me, I'm not trying to nail a 10 out of 10. Like my kid is going to show up in something animal related, and it is not going to be a 10. It's probably going to be a 2, but they're going to be happy about it because I hyped them up about it. We got it done. They're there. They're participating. They don't feel any less loved. People may be judging me that my kid doesn't look like an animal at all, and I literally do not care. A lot of times it's like we're thinking about how is someone out on the outside going to think about like that as an example. And that's just not important. But the ways that I do choose to spend my time and have these special moments with my kids, I know are the things that are going to fill their cup, the things that are going to make them feel loved, the things that are going to encourage them. And that's what I focus on. And I'm not trying to get a perfect score. So like how is that for you of like trying to figure out and let go of maybe some of the society expectations and maybe your own expectations of being kind of perfect at everything?
Well, I think a very important question to ask yourself is this going to matter in 5 years or is it
Yes.
not? So like the costumes are not going to matter a lick in 5 years. It's meaningless. So whatever they wore, it doesn't matter. So that's good. You're not focusing on that one. But do they feel secure in my love for them? That's important in 5 years. So I think if you just ask yourself, how important is this in the overall scheme of my child's growth, then that really puts things more into perspective.
Yes, totally. And I see so many people sadly like get wrapped up in all of those small things that they're so stressed. And what their kid is going to remember is the stress that you're having, not
True.
that you got them this perfect costume, right? So it's really freeing when you kind of get to that point. And I think it's a really crucial step in this ability to ditch the mom guilt is really that great question. Is this going to matter in 5 years? Is this going to be a core part of what becomes their identity? And if not, like just let it go and do the best you can. And so I think we touch on this a little bit, but as you led having a successful career, was there and things that you intentionally wanted to teach me through that process?
Well, I just really wanted you to see that a woman could have it all, which I was able to do, and I'm so thankful for that because I was a stay-at-home mom. Even if I went to an office, I was a stay-at-home mom because you were there with me or I was at home with you. I was a stay-at-home mom, and yet I had a great career that I loved, and I was fulfilled. And I think a lot of women feel like they have to make a choice. Like,
Right.
can I have it both? I either have a career or I have this time with my child as they grow up. And it's really not, you have to make a choice because it is possible to do both and to do both well.
Yes. I love that. I think you did, right? Because then I got to see that and I now got to live that. And there's so many things that I, want to pass on to my girls and teach them and the opportunities you get because it's not always easy being an entrepreneur. It's not like one of the things, the mantras I have for my girls is we can do hard things. And I get to show them that, not just say it as words, but they get to see me walk through hard things and get to see that I can do it. And therefore, when I tell them something happens at school, somebody said something that hurt their feelings, and, I can tell them, well, we can do hard things. And, that's just one example. But I think having that intentionality of what you're trying to teach your kids and then seeing how you can put that as a part of your entrepreneurial journey, it again is a tool to help you ditch that guilt because then you see your business as an outlet to teach your kids things, not as something that is just taking time away from your kids. Perspective is so important. And if you see it through that viewpoint, if you see it as this business, this goal, this thing I'm striving for, here's the ways and the lessons that I can teach my kids, not by just what I say, but what I do, right? They learn so much more seeing you do things. And then as you're doing those things, and you're showing it to them, it feels so fulfilling instead of, oh, I'm just, not there for this particular soccer practice or whatever that guilt kind of nags at us. So get that perspective. Think about, I love to challenge all of the listeners to really think about in whatever business you're in, whatever entrepreneurial thing you're doing right now, what are the lessons that you could be teaching your kids intentionally? So, as we wrap up, what are just some of the top tips you would give to a mom that is balancing all the things right now? Being a mom, running a business, all of the things.
Well, I think the most important thing is to just have fun with what you're doing and enjoy the moment, whether you're working or whether you're with your children. Just enjoy the moment. Don't let life overwhelm you. Don't let any part of it overwhelm you, but just enjoy it because your kids are going to be grown before you know it. Um, and you want to be able to enjoy the time you have with them and just be happy, just enjoy your life, live every day, and make sure that you've got joy and happiness in your life every day. Make that a priority because it's easy to get so sucked up into your to-do list and the things you have to get done and accomplished. But you can do a lot while still taking those breaths, having those hugs and those kisses with your kids and teaching them lessons along the way. And just be intentional about what you're doing. I think it will make a big difference.
I love that. And I think you did a great example of that. You can find joy and laughter in any situation. And I think those are the things that your kids honestly remember. They remember how you showed up to all of the various um, parts of life, the good times, the bad times, everything in between. And I think intentionality, as you mentioned, is everything. And if you need help getting more intentional with your schedule, we have a great podcast on 5 tips that'll save you 5 hours a week that I definitely recommend you listen to because that is that intentionality with what you're doing and being able to be present. It follows that intentionality because if I know what I'm supposed to be doing in that moment and what my focus is, whether it's business related or kids related, then you can show up there fully with that intention. So thank you so much for being here first time on the podcast. So that was fun to do it on Bring Your Kids to Work Day here at Neora. And for everyone out there, thank you for continuing to listen in. Make sure that you are subscribed so that you get all of the episodes and share this maybe with somebody who, you think that this message would be a blessing to. And as always, thanks for listening.
That was Amber Olson Rourke and Renee Olson talking about how entrepreneurs can lose the mom guilt and enjoy the balance between work and parenting. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if you learned something from it, please share it with a friend or colleague who you think would also benefit. And if you're new to Built to Win, we invite you to go back and listen to our story from the beginning. You can find us wherever you download your favorite podcasts. And while you're there, please rate us and leave a review to let us know what you think of the show.